Hey y'all, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to talk to somebody from Seed the Vote today about a little election, a couple little elections you might have heard of. Sorry about that. So I'm going to be talking with Emily Lee, who is the executive director and co-founder of Seed the Vote. I'm super excited. I want to tell you a little bit about Seed the Vote. Seed the Vote recruits, trains, and supports volunteers to knock on doors and make calls with powerful social justice organizers in swing states to win key federal election fights, to stop the right from gaining power, and to grow our movements long term. So we're talking long-term strategy, we're talking short-term strategy. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for, anything like that. We're talking about what it is we can do in the next little while. We're talking about what some strategies are. So if you find it useful, I really, really hope you go and follow Seed the Vote, because I think they are an incredible resource for us in this moment. Seed the Vote became a volunteer powerhouse to help defeat Trump and flip the Senate in 2020. They turned into people power organizing in the 2022 midterm elections. Now they're deepening and expanding their work to show up powerfully for the 2024 elections, which has included canvassing and phone banking for the squad, specifically members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire in Gaza and are now being targeted by AIPAC, a pro-Israel super PAC. They're currently organizing to get folks out to Missouri for Congresswoman Cori until August 6th. So I'm going to be joined by Emily Lee, who's the executive director and co-founder of Seed the Vote. Emily Lee is a leader in electoral organizing who was also a co-founder of Seed the Vote. Back in 2019, she spent 10 years at the Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco and 8 years at San Francisco Rising, a multiracial grassroots alliance focused on building power for communities of color and low-income communities. And we're going to talk about all these things and more. So I'm so glad you're here. And also, please, wow, it said that Emily declined. So Emily, if you're watching, please re-accept or send me a new request. I'm not sure what happened. Anyways, this is with Seed the Vote. If you just joined, we're talking to Emily Lee, who is the executive director and co-founder. Okay, Emily, if you're there, please send another request. So we had your app saved my being in the last week. My goodness, what a week it has been. Okay, Emily, let's try this again. Okay, we had that Mars-Uranus conjunction on Monday. Was louder than I thought, louder than, okay, Emily. Hi!
Hi, Chani. Thanks so much.
We did it.
We did it.
Okay, I don't know if you heard, but I just introduced you and Seed the Vote. So how are you?
I'm so glad we're talking today because I have never needed to be more grounded than I need to be right in this
Aw,
moment. So, super grateful to be joining you today. And also, I have to say that my partner just tested positive for
oh,
COVID, and
oh my
I
gosh.
know
I'm
it's
so
just,
sorry.
it's okay.
It's a
Thank you.
good I mean, listen, COVID is still very flirty and alive and well.
Totally. And because of this, I actually have to jump off a little bit
Okay.
early to go
Yeah.
pick up my son from daycare.
Mm,
So,
wishing you all incredible health, and nobody else in the house has it.
so far,
Okay.
so far. We'll
Okay.
see.
Okay.
But yeah, I just need to jump off around 4:20.
Yes. Okay, great. So, let's talk about the person that mismanaged COVID like nobody else. The RNC has begun. It started on some of the most volatile astrology of the year. We entered into it in this volatile situation where everyone's talking about the attempted assassination of 45, and there are people still asking Biden to step down as Democratic nominee after his performance at the debate. There's a real sentiment that Biden's staunch support of Israel will cost him the election and that Trump will win. This is where we are, right? So if you want to vote, if you don't want to vote, whatever. We're just like laying the landscape of that piece of our political reality at this moment. Do you want to comment on any of that? Go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing that I've been saying to myself and to, our Seed the Vote volunteers and supporters and everyone in my life is just like, nothing is a foregone conclusion. Nothing is preordained. Like we don't, as if anything, the events of the last couple of weeks have shown us is that we did not know what was going to happen in this year and in this election. It is a really kind of political roller coaster. It's really turbulent. These times are just kind of, we don't know what to expect. And so I think to really understand that and to remember that nothing, we don't know, like it's a real possibility Trump could win. And there's a real possibility that we can defeat him. And how to bring back agency to ourselves about we are agents of change. We can't control everything. We can't control Biden. We can't control the RNC and Trump, but we can control what we choose to do. And our intervention this year can actually make a difference. And partly that's because of the messed up way our democratic system is set up, right? Where a handful of swing states and a handful of counties in those swing states really will decide who's going to be the next president of our country. And so I just think I try to remember that in this time of like, yeah, let's control what we can control. Seed the Vote has a very particular role of trying to get volunteers to go to swing states to support local grassroots organizations on the ground who are doing this important work year round, before an election, after an election, and they want our volunteers to come and help them, knock on those doors and talk to those voters and persuade people that everyone has a role to play, everyone's voice matters, and that human connection is actually what is going to convince people that they shouldn't just sit this out. Like this is a historic moment and we all need to be doing our part.
I've heard a couple of things lately that have really stuck with me. And one is, and I'm regretful that I'm forgetting the source, but that one is that people on the right think their vote is like all powerful. Like they're like, this is my vote, it means everything, to like maybe an extreme degree. And then the people on the left are like, my vote, it doesn't matter. And that's one thing that I'm just sitting with of like like you said, agency, power. I think a lot about down ballot voting, of what you're doing, how you're organizing, like for Cori Bush right now, for folks that are for a ceasefire in Gaza, like what that actually means. I think that in the face of everything that is apparent right now and like the, absolute kind of collapse in all the systems that we're living within, everything feels futile. And I think on the left, oftentimes, one of the things we really battle with is like wanting things to be perfect or wanting things to be the way that we ultimately want them to be. And ultimately we can imagine our way into and think our way and strategize our way into, but they're not there yet. And so how do we stay with our agency and the power that we do have, and also think and build long term? I think about those things a lot. And then I think about the fact that democracy is really rooted in small communities and being connected to folks. And I think that Seed the Vote is one of those organizations that can help people feel into both like just our interpersonal connections and remembering the power of talking to each other, but also helping us to remember like where we do have agency. And I'll just say, like, the astrology backs up your claims. Like the astrology of July that we just had was the wildest piece. And the astrology of August that is the wildest begins on August 19th, which is the beginning of the DNC. So all that to say, I've been saying to everybody, like, astrologically, I have no idea who's going to even be running come September, because July and August just feel so like, I don't know, it's wild. So anyways, I just wanted to add kind of those things to what you're saying. And I don't know if we want to talk into more like the ways in which the right has this like really deep strategy. They have Project 2025. If we want to talk about some of that, if we want to talk about what it would mean for someone like Cori Bush to win again, what does it mean to struggle against AIPAC? What is AIPAC? Like, you can kind of take it any of those directions if you want.
Yeah, great. And I love your point too. It's like we like what we're trying to build is much bigger than any election, right? Like our movement, our long-term strategy, it's not about a candidate, it's not about a party, it's not we're not doing this because of Biden, right? Like it's none of us who are probably listening to this are doing this for any candidate. And in some ways that's like doesn't matter who the nominee is, our work is the same. We're building long-term for our communities, in the struggle, and in this fight for liberation that is not never been about a candidate or a single party. And and it's important for us to just kind of keep that like eye on the prize, because I do think there's so many ways if you're reading the news to get wrapped up like, who's going to be, is he going to step aside, is he not, who's going to be the next nominee, is that going to help us or not? And we just keep reminding ourselves like, like we can't control what Biden does, and like in that choice that he will have to make. And like let's own that. In some ways that's liberating a little bit to be like, let's remind ourselves what we can do. And I just feel like how Seed the Vote started in 2019 was like 100 volunteers, at the outset. And then but because it was all relational, it was about like, okay, I'm going to tap my friends, my family, my coworkers, my networks. And it grew to 9,000 volunteers doing something in 2020, right? Whether it was phone banking or door knocking or fundraising, so that we could get more people on the ground in the swing states. So I think that, yeah, like being part of an organization like Seed the Vote, it really is empowering because it does just helps us live into what is democracy, what is community, and what's the kind of world that we're trying to build, right? And so I think that on the flip side of that, like you mentioned, Project 2025, like that is not the world we want to happen and roll out. And that's exactly what Republicans, the Heritage Foundation, which is a right wing think tank, has put out is that, they have a whole plan for as soon as Trump gets into office, that they're going to be dismantling social safety nets, getting rid of the Environmental Protection Agency, removing any protections for transgender young people and healthcare, through Medicaid and Medicare. They're going to be taking away Social Security. They're going to be, turning the National Guard against protesters, right? Like they have said very clearly what they want to do if Trump is in power, and it is
And even if he
terrifying.
isn't, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, even if
it
he
doesn't
isn't,
matter who the nominee. Sure,
this is their
this is
project.
their project. Doesn't matter if it's not Trump, if it's some other Republican. This is
But
where
even if the Democrats get back and win the presidency, that's still their project.
that's still their
So
exactly. That's still their
this
ultimate goal.
yeah, this project is something that is not just going to go away with an election. And that's another thing that's really been staying with me is that the left or not the left. I think liberals have done a real disservice to the masses because we've been taught that all we need to do is vote. That is like it's
Yeah.
like one little tiny drop in a bucket of what we need to do. And what you're saying, what you do, what we need to do is build community. We need to build coalitions. We need to build solidarity. We need to build mutual aid. We need to be taking care of each other on such a like big mass level. But we also need to be, I think, building this ability to be with people that aren't perfect and they're not gonna say the things in the way that we need to say. Like how we really build solidarity is not to find people who are exactly like us. How do
Sadly.
we build capacity to have conversations with folks where it's not a perfect fit? When we talk a lot about building community and building coalition, but I feel like the skills to do so, we're really not taught how to do that. And I think COVID, has really shrunk our
Yeah.
capacity to be able to. So when you're like training volunteers and stuff, like how do you help people build capacity to be in conversations, be in moments with folks that we're like really different from, or like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like in some ways, I think that's why some people have been so transformed by volunteering with us and going on the doors, is
Mm,
like actually people make very personal human connections with people, right? Like complete strangers on the
mm,
doors. And I'll just share
mm,
this really short, this one story that I always hold in my heart, which is kind of like, I don't know, just the perfect example, I think, of why this kind of connection is needed.
mm,
Is in 2020, we had a volunteer, a canvasser, Casey, who went from, I think it was, didn't live in Georgia, but went to Georgia to volunteer with one of our partners. This was to flip the Senate, and this was a Georgia Senate runoff race. They talked with a voter who was decades long on the Democratic rolls, had been registered as a voter for decades, had never voted, not even in the 2020 November election to try to defeat Trump. Like she hadn't voted, and she listened to our volunteer, talked to her, just like explained like what was important to her, why she hadn't voted. And like our volunteer actually convinced her, like, okay, you know what? I am going to vote in the Senate race. I'm going to vote. You've convinced me. But the problem is like I can't. I'm watching my grandkids. I can't leave the house. I just can't go do it. And our volunteer was like, you know what? No problem. Like, come, all of you, come with me. I will drive you to the polls. I will take you there. Don't worry. We'll figure it out. And that woman, like, who is like, somebody who most campaigns would have ignored. Like most campaigns, if you haven't voted in 20 years, I'm not going to go knock your door. They're like, you're never going to vote. I'm not going to waste my time on you. But like this type of voter who actually just needed a human connection to show that like your voice matters, who you are as a person matters. And like to have somebody like visibilize and see her and to then drive her to the polls and like support her in that really concrete action. Like, yeah, voting's not everything, but it's something.
mhm.
And then that she voted for the first time. And then 2 years later, Seed the Vote was back in Georgia again on another runoff. And the volunteer texted this voter. He's like, hey, he's like, had their number still on the phone. It's like, hey, I'm back in Georgia. How's everything going? How are you? And this woman just replied and said, oh my God, I talk about you all the time. Like, you are
Oh,
the reason why I have voted in every single election since 2020. And that's
wow.
just the kind of like impact people are having, right? And like,
Mm,
you can't have that kind of connection impact if you can't kind of see people in a way that's like gives more possibility and just like really believes in people's capacity, right? As humans. So I think like there's, we do train people like, yeah, how do you talk to a Republican who maybe we're trying to convince you don't want the kind of future that Trump's talking about. Like
mm,
most, you're maybe we're talking to young Republican women who are like actually believe in a woman's right, to abortion, and like they
mm,
don't actually want that future. And it's like it's important for them to connect with somebody who's going to support them in that and who's going to
mm.
help them cross that bridge to be like, it's okay. You don't need to vote for Trump again. You can still be, you can be whoever you want and still make that choice for yourself. And so I think part of it is we do try to reach across many different political spectrums.
Mm,
If we're just preaching to the choir, like you said, we're not going to win, and we're not going to
mhm.
build the kind of coalition we need to really change what direction our society's going. And I think that's part of it, right? Is like extreme political polarization, the inability to like talk to people who don't think exactly like you. These are not good symptoms of like a healthy multiracial democracy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my wife's work is in gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and it's the work that, we are an astrological company. The app is an astrological app, but we do a lot of, work in that domain. And one of the main functions of an abusive dynamic is to isolate somebody and to make sure that they don't have friends and family and coworkers. And the same happens on a societal level. Like fascism rises when people feel isolated and alone, when people are lonely. And so that's what I think is so brilliant about what you all are doing, because you're kind of helping to overturn some of that isolation, even like little bit by little bit. It's 4:20 and I want you to go pick up your child. And I'm so sorry this is so short. Will you come back and can we talk about holding
always.
tension, about what is happening in Gaza, what is happening with this election, what it means to do down ballot voting, how we can support Cori Bush, what all of it
Always.
actually means.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
But in the
please,
meantime,
everyone,
please go follow Seed the Vote and
follow
go to
See the
Seed
Vote and
SV
See the Vote.
stvote.org.
Yes, stvote.org, but also Cori Bush's election. one of our ceasefire champions. It's August 6th. We need people to go out there to St. Louis. We will help support your trip. If you need financial aid, please come support Cori. She's one of our people, and we need to show the right wing that like you can't come after our folks like this, right? So we need to defend her. So please sign up and join us on the doors either now or in the future. And thank you so much, Chani. You're just
Thank you.
such a force for good right now that we all need. So I appreciate you so much.
I can't wait to talk more with you.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good luck and sending all the health to your whole family.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Talk soon.
Take good care.